Joe, snap your fingers, then you lean back. All out of state, on the day they never seen that. Ain't fat, Joe, snap your fingers, then you lean back.
Hello and welcome to Viti Vibes TV. I'm your host Pranay Sharma, and this is your show if you're a youth, and we love bringing you issues that are faced by our youth in today's society. This can be anything and everything. Being a youth in today's society is not easy by any means. We're faced by many challenges and by peer pressure from our friends and colleagues. So, before I begin, I want to mention that we are broadcasting from the unceded territories of the Kwantlen, Silvertooth, and Squamish nations. To begin, the month of April is also known as Daffodil Month. So if you see people across Canada selling daffodils for funds for Canadian cancer, please support them, because at the end of the day you're getting flowers and you're donating at the same time. April is also known as Sikh Heritage Month. Sikhs have been over in this country for quite a bit, and they've contributed a lot to the Canadian society. Also, happy Vaisakhi to all the members of the Sikh community. Vaisakhi is the birth of the 10 Gurus and the birth of Sikhism, and also the festival of harvest. Due to the pandemic, we're not doing the Nagar Kirtan this year in Surrey or Vancouver. Moving on. Happy Easter to all our friends and families who are celebrating from the Kirtan faith. This is coming up on April 15th, and Easter is on Sunday, April 17th. As well as happy Ramadan to all our Islamic community members. This is their holiest month of fasting, and Eid will either be celebrated on the 2nd or 3rd of May. Last but not least, those who enjoy rugby sevens will be in town on the 16th and 17th of April. We know how Fijians go crazy, so when Fiji Rugby is in town, they fill up the stadiums and with Fijian costumes, flags, and pretty much everything else. Also, good luck to the Fijian rugby team. Now, we'll be back from a break with our director, Shannon Pramal. Please have a look.
Hello, and welcome back to Viti Vibes TV. I'm your director and host, Shannon Pramal, and thanks for sticking around with us yet another week. You can watch our episodes every week on the Shaw Multicultural channel. That's Thursdays at 10 p.m. and Sundays at 4:30 p.m. every week. You can also watch our shows on YouTube in case you miss them. That being said, today we're here to talk about, with a special guest that's been here in the past. His name's Rizwan Abbas, and he's with us here yet again to share his experiences with the IndoFijian Museum that he curated, and talk a little bit more about his future projects and things that he's already been accomplishing within such a short amount of time. So first and foremost, hello Rizwan.
Hi Shannon, thanks for having me.
Oh yeah, of course. I love to have you back and to see that you're doing so many more cool projects out here. I'm so glad that you're here to talk a little bit more about that. But first and foremost, you've been here in the past, but for those of viewers that are joining us today, could you give them a little bit of an introduction of yourself?
Sure. Hi everybody, my name is Rizwan Abbas. I'm an archaeologist here in British Columbia, and the curator for an exhibit called the IndoFijians, Surrey's Pocket of Paradise at the Museum of Surrey. The exhibit opened about 8 months ago, actually. I was here last. We talked about the exhibit at the opening of the exhibit, and
Yes.
Unfortunately the exhibit is about to close now. It's about 2 weeks till the end of the month, and the last day will be on April the 30th. That will be the last day of the exhibit. But since that time, yes, a lot of things have changed, a lot of things have happened. For one thing, the exhibit was such a hit that they extended it for 3 more months. So it was supposed to be closed on December of 2021. But they extended it for 3 more months, so here we are. Still got a couple more weeks with the exhibit. I think, well, since the last time we spoke, the exhibit has garnered a lot of attention and a lot of feedback from both the Indo-Fijian community, the South Asian community, and the community of Surrey in general, and the Lower Mainland. I've had messages from friends and family and colleagues and people I don't even know from all over the world, actually, from Fiji, Australia, New Zealand, the UK, America, all over Canada. It's been amazing. It's been overwhelming and very humbling to know that I was able to do something that touched so many people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to applaud you, first of all. First, I told you this last time too, like having this museum made was such a unique thing, and definitely needed, I think, for our community and just for everybody else to just see that, you know what, we're here, we're people, that we exist here, and we're going to take up this little space. And you know what it is? It's just like like did something small, like probably in your head, but it was greater than you.
Yeah.
And I definitely think that's why you're getting all the messages, because we don't get that kind of representation a lot of the time for our community. But for the people that are joining us today, the new viewers, could you give them a little bit more of a brief overview of like your museum exhibit?
Yeah, definitely. The museum exhibit is broken down into three parts. The introduction is introducing the Indo-Fijian people, our history, our shared heritage, how the Indians left India, traveled to Fiji, and how they transitioned from becoming Indians to becoming Gurmitias, indentured laborers working for the United Kingdom in Fiji. So the first half talks about that story, about the demographics of the people themselves, who they were. It also introduces one of the historical figures that is important in our community, Pandit Dodaram Sanadia. I discuss him briefly and the impacts he had on our community. The second part of the exhibit discusses the actual culture itself. So I talk about some of the unique aspects of our culture, the food, the language, our clothing, music, for example. And in this section, I also talk about my father. My father is kind of my motivation for doing this exhibit. But I talk a little bit about his journey of moving from Fiji as an immigrant to Canada, to Sparwood, British Columbia, a small mining town in southeastern British Columbia, and how he helped in kind of the same light as our Gurmitia ancestors moving from India to Fiji. It was kind of the parallel of my dad and his generation of immigrants. I mean, your family as well. Many of us here that are here are our parents or our grandparents, how they transitioned from Fiji to Canada to start a new life, very similar to how our Gurmitia ancestors did. So I talk about my dad and his journey specifically in doing that. And then the last half, or the last third of the exhibit is describing the people and some of the communities and programs that we have here in Surrey that help perpetuate the South Asian, help perpetuate the Indo-Fijian culture here in a larger South Asian boiling pot of Surrey.
Yeah, thanks for that rundown. Yeah, so you kind of talked more about the museum exhibit. I want to also commend you that you did all this. This museum actually opened like mid-COVID, so you were like, obviously so many barriers just because pandemic, like literally just pandemic, so many things are just against you, you know what I mean? But you were able to pull it off, and I want to also say that you did it in such a unique way where you were also not just an in-person museum exhibit, but there's also like a virtual option as well for people that couldn't actually be there in the exhibit, and I really do like think that was like a really good move, just so like everybody can enjoy, because I know I sent that link out to people like in the States that couldn't actually, like, that when I was posting about this, they're like, but I don't live here, like I really want to see it, because even like say for an example in the States or like other places in the world where there's not very many Indo-Fijians doing these sort of things, right, in their community, that they were able to kind of see that it exists somewhere at least.
Yes.
And they're like, we're taking up space somewhere and being recognized for that. So I want to say like that was definitely like a really good move on your part. So kudos to you for that. And yeah, so like we're reflecting kind of more, you're reflecting actually, but I want to say more about your experience with curating the museum and the exhibit and the kind of process that you had to go through. And now that it was open for 8 months.
Yes.
Yeah, 8 months later. Obviously, you've received tons of feedback, criticisms, I assume, as well. So we're kind of reflecting on how do you think like this museum exhibit affected the community?
Well, I actually had a great conversation with a PhD student at the University of the Fraser Valley, South Asian Studies Institute. She studies, her PhD thesis actually is about museums being a place of, I'm totally butchering this, I'm sorry I'm getting this wrong, but museums being a place of gathering, of people coming together. And I found that this museum exhibit was both literally and figuratively a place of gathering. It was a place people could come to see our culture, to witness our culture, to learn about our culture. So it was a literal place where all our information, a figurative place where all our information was stored in one place where people could come to. But it was also a literal place where we met. For example, I met you there, and we met a bunch of IndoFijian people that day, one day at the museum. And one of the greatest things about this exhibit was identifying a lot of like-minded individuals, a lot of people such as yourself, such as many different people. Actually, if I start going into names, I won't stop. But what happened was I met people that had the same values, the same motivation of perpetuating our culture in our society, and that was the place we met. We actually decided that this was the best place for us to meet, and I think that was one of the greatest things about this exhibit, was that in this 8 months of having it there, was not just the feedback that I kept getting from people, but was actually meeting these people that it touched a nerve with, that it actually meant something to, and it's motivated all of us to keep doing things for our community, and hopefully there'll be more in the future.
Yeah, that's awesome. How about the community outside of our Indo-Fijian community?
Yeah.
How do you think it have kind of affected them?
Well, a lot of people didn't know that the Indo-Fijian community existed here in Surrey. Lost amongst the larger South Asian population is our small, unique Indo-Fijian culture, and a lot of people were, I think, the biggest piece of information that resonated the most with most people in the exhibit was the fact that the Indo-Fijian population here in the Lower Mainland is one of the 4 largest diasporas in the world. We're a very large population of Indo-Fijians here. Sacramento, California, New Zealand, and Australia being the other 3 large populations of Indo-Fijian people. So people didn't realize that we had such a great concentration of Indo-Fijians here in the world. I think that was something that was really poignant for people to learn.
Yeah, I didn't even know that. Like, I knew there's like a lot of Indo-Fijians here compared to like other places in the world. Like, obviously we hear about like the Bay Area, like Sacramento, Elk Grove, and like Modesto, like kind of that area. And then obviously New Zealand, Australia, because that's close to Fiji. I didn't know that was the 4th though.
Yeah.
That is insane.
Unfortunately, I can't go any further into identifying where it ranks in the 4.
Yeah.
Mainly because of issues with our Canada census. I worked with the census, I believe, in 2016. Not the last time, but the second to last time that they did the census, and was really keen on the questions. But I didn't have the framework that I have now, the Indo-Fijian framework that I'm looking, the lens that I look the world through. So the second time around, when I was doing it in 2021, when I actually filled out the census form, I came to realize that the census form doesn't accurately capture Indo-Fijian people. It doesn't capture us properly, because when it talks about language, we can be English, obviously, or we can be Hindi. But Hindi is no different, in that term, is no different than the Hindi that's spoken in India. But our Hindi is a little bit different. It's more of a Hindustani, as we like to call it, as opposed to a Hindi language. So it doesn't capture that. Excuse me. Not only that, but when we talk about religion as well, when we get categorized as Hindu or Muslim, it doesn't talk about where, if we're Indo, from Fiji or not. And then also, of course, when discussing race, what's our heritage? Our heritage isn't Fijian, right? Because we're not native Fijian. But our heritage isn't quite Indian, because we're Indo-Fijian. So some people like to tick the Indian box, some people like to tick the Fijian box, but then the indigenous Fijians are also ticking the Fijian box. So we don't get a very accurate representation of how many Indo-Fijians there actually are in Canada. But we before we recorded, we were talking about some of my future plans, but that's in there as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely good point you brought up, because like a lot of the times we see these forms that are trying to figure out like what do you identify as, and then there's never a box that really captures what we are. It's like, are you a South Pacific Islander? Are you like this? It's never, because it's like you're a little bit of everything, you know what I mean? And it's just, I've always had my identity crisis every time I've had to read one of those boxes and try and figure out which one am I. And I think a lot of people can resonate with that feeling too. It's like, okay, clearly we're not recognized enough to like have to like get our own box. You know what I mean? But we should, exactly. So just to wrap up a little bit more about your museum, what are your like big takeaways that you have from like this whole experience?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway I have from the experience of this exhibit is that there is a need for more research. There's a need to shed more light on the subcultures here in Surrey, not just the Indo-Fijian people, but the other Indo-displaced people, for people from Mauritius, the Indo-Caribbean people. There's a lot of people of Indian descent who feel lost the same way that we do as Indo-Fijians, who have a hard time being able to relate to being a South Asian. And I think that the only way and the best way, in my opinion, to identify these people is to have more knowledge of these cultures. So yeah, that's like I applaud the Museum of Surrey for having the Community Treasures exhibit and this initiative where people from the community can come and show off their wares, just like I did. And if there's anybody else who's interested in doing so, please do call the Museum of Surrey and do that. With that being said, of course, my exhibit is closing at the end of the month, so I am looking for somewhere else to show the exhibit. If there is anybody in California, New Zealand, or Australia, Calgary, Edmonton, Western Canada, Eastern Canada, anyone who wants to have the exhibit showcased at their museum or at their venue, I'd be more than happy to cater for that. I mean, of course, it'd be changed a little bit because it's for British Columbia now, but nonetheless, I mean, our people need to be heard and seen.
Sorry, excuse me. Yeah, that's beautifully said. And yeah, make it worldwide. I'm just saying, like, this needs to, that's what I'm saying. Like, when there was a virtual option for this museum, like, I just went crazy sending it to everybody that's not from around here. And, like, the response that they got back there, like, they wish they had something there for them. Where they lived. And it's like, I know, I really wish I could just, like, you know, take it and put it over there. But, like, you know what, like, we'll take whatever we can get at this point. But definitely I hope to one day see your exhibit go international. Just a traveling one.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be awesome.
That'd be really cool. So let's talk more about like your new projects that are coming up. But first, kind of like, I want to talk about your identity because you are born here.
Yes.
Right? In BC, Canada.
Yep.
And you grew up actually in a city called Sparwood.
Yep.
And obviously, like, Indo-Fijian, I feel like there's a lot more Indo-Fijians in, like, Vancouver, Surrey, like, this sort of area here in the Lower Mainland. But you kind of came from a city where there's not many Indo-Fijians.
Yep.
And to be honest, I didn't even know Sparwood was a city until, you said you were from there. I was like, oh, wait, what's that? I've never heard of it, right? So how was that, navigating your identity in, like, that sort of environment there as an Indo-Fijian?
Yeah. Well, Sparwood is, it's not even close to a city. I mean, it's like at the moment, there's about 3,000 people living in Sparwood. When I grew up in Sparwood, there was about 5,000 people. I like to think that after I moved away, 2,000 people decided that it wasn't worth living there anymore and they left. But growing up in Sparwood was probably the best thing that happened in my life. I couldn't think of anywhere else to grow up other than Sparwood. Sparwood is a small coal mining town in southeastern British Columbia, the little tip of British Columbia, and that goes into Alberta there. It's like the easternmost town in that little bit in the southeast part of British Columbia. And surprisingly enough, there's a lot of South Asians who live in Sparwood and in that area, in the Elk Valley area. There's a couple of towns, Fernie, Sparwood, and Elkford. There's a lot of South Asians that live there, mainly because it's a coal mining area. So a lot of the South Asians moved there to work in the coal mines. My dad as well, and surprisingly, there's a lot of Indo-Fijians there as well, quite a bit, percentage-wise, considering that there's about 5,000 people in Sparwood at the time when I grew up there in the 80s and 90s. There's, I'd say, just off the top of my head, around 10 families. So, I mean, that's a pretty big concentration compared to the amount of people. So I had the luxury of the fortune, I would say, the good fortune of growing up in a household where my parents taught me Indo-Fijian values and Islamic values, but I also got to be raised in households that had Hindu values and Christian values as well. And then, of course, I had the opportunity of living with my friends, my European friends, and having dinners at their houses, and understanding that there's more to the culture than just what I'm being told as an Indo-Fijian Muslim person. Like, there's more to life. There's the way that Indo-Fijian Hindu people live. There's a way that Punjabi people live, from Sikh Punjabi people live. There's a way that Hindus from India live. There's a way that Europeans live. There's all these different avenues of life that that people have. So I had that exposure, this very multi-racial exposure that I don't believe I would have had I grown up in Surrey.
Wow, that's actually really interesting, like, to hear, because, like, I obviously didn't know about this, like, little town, and, like, knowing that there was actually, like, Indo-Fijians there that you actually got to grow up with and experience that kind of culture. That's actually really interesting to hear.
You know, actually, even more cool than that, at least I think so, is these people, most of the Indo-Fijians who live there were actually from the same town as my parents. But not just from the same town, they were from the same bin, right? They were from Balata in Davao in the Fiji Islands. So it's mind-blowing to me to think that my parents moved to Canada, lived in a small town like Sparwood, but they lived there with people that they grew up with in Surrey.
They just brought them all together.
Everybody just came, like, you know, one person from, well, there's about 5 people in 1963 who moved from Vancouver to Sparwood, and they realized that there's jobs to be had here. So they wrote back to Davao, to their family in Balata, and told them that there was jobs, and people came. And my dad and his brother came as well, and moved to Sparwood, and my dad ended up staying. His brother, my barkaba, ended up moving to Vancouver, and that's where we started. So a lot of the people that that I grew up with were people that my parents knew from there when they were children. So it's kind of like a mini Balata in Sparwood, which makes sense. It's like a little town in a remote area that in Fiji, and it's a little town in a remote area in British Columbia too.
Nice. That is actually really cool to hear. Like, literally everyone just traveled together. That's actually really nice. Just to keep things moving, this is your main thing that I wanted to really talk about today. Today you're sitting here as a published academic author.
Yes.
And that is insane to hear, and I'm honestly honored to be sitting next to you right now. You have just been killing it, honestly, for, like, within such a short amount of time of, like, curating this exhibit and then getting a chapter in this book. So for the viewers at home, Rizwan has actually published a chapter on Indo-Fijians. I'll let you talk a little bit more about that, but it's in a book called A Social History of South Asians in British Columbia.
Yeah.
So Rizwan, I'll let you do the talking about the book. Tell us a little bit more about it, and how did you ever actually think you were going to become a published academic author, like, any day in the past?
Yeah, you know, Shannon, it's been my dream.
Really?
It's been my dream to become a published author. I have a poem I wrote in 1998 that was published. I had the results of my master's thesis was published in 2013 after I graduated with my master's degree.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Rizwan, for joining me today and talking about, like, this was honestly some great conversation I think we've had today, and I hope the viewers at home really enjoyed it as well. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, anytime. And for all of you at home, make sure you check this out, because I really think it's definitely something you want to see, because representation matters, and this is as good as it gets right now. So with that being said, we'll see you all next week on Viti Vibes. Have a great day and take care of yourselves.
Thank you, Shannon. We have some announcements that we'd like you to be interested in participating in, so please have your pen and papers ready. Fijian Canada Business Association is hosting their business gala on May 7th at 6:30 p.m. and it's at the Bollywood Banquet Hall in Surrey. Tickets for this gala is only $35 per person, and a table of 8 is only $280 per table. All proceeds from this gala will go towards the Guru Nanak Diversity Village long-term care home for seniors. Our chief guest at this gala will be His Excellency Dr. Satyendra Prasad, Fijian Ambassador to North America. Moving on. Canada and USA ex-Khalsa reunion is taking place in Surrey on September 4th at the Bollywood Banquet Hall in Surrey, 201 8166 128th Street in Surrey. Tickets are only $40 per person, and all the proceeds will go towards the Khalsa College in Ba, Fiji Islands. For tickets and more information, please call Camila Singh at 604-537-5123 or Uma Grant, that is UMA Grant 02 at yahoo.ca, or Sunita Singh 2023 at gmail.com. Moving on. Canadian Empowered Women of Fiji Foundation is doing its Mother's Day event at the Kanna Banquet Hall in Surrey. All the proceeds will go towards the people of Ukraine, and for tickets and more information, please call 604-825-8281 or 604-831-0240. If you're celebrating any special events or your graduation, please send that to us and we'd be happy to share on the show. Please send it to fijiinfocus@gmail.com. We ran out of time, and we hope you enjoy the show as much as we love bringing it to you. If you've missed any of our shows today, you can please watch it again at 4:30 on Sundays in BC and 5:30 at Alberta time. No show is complete without our sponsors, so if you want to sponsor the show or for the Fijian community, then please call Camila at 604-537-5123. And before I leave, I want to leave you with these thoughts. I consider human rights work, activism, and to be a kind of spiritual practice by defending those people who are prosecuted in their race, religion, ethnicity, identity, or ideology. You are actually contributing to guiding our human family and peace, justice, and dignity by Dalai Lama. I'm Pranay Sharma, and I'm signing off. We'll all see you guys next week, and in the meantime, please put your masks on and stay safe and stay healthy. See you guys next week.
Buying or selling a house is a difficult process. Get Prem Prakash from Sabah Realty Limited to find you your dream home, whether it's your first house, upgrading, or investment property. Always at your service with a fast, friendly, and honest opinion. Prem Prakash will guide you through the entire process. Get in touch with him today for a free, no-obligation consultation at 778-840-5866. I understand how important it is to have a place called home, and it's frustrating using your hard-earned money on rent. Vic Prasad can make you a homeowner. Get pre-approved services provided to first-time buyers and new immigrants. You can qualify for mortgage even if you have bad credit. Call Vic Prasad now on 604-306-6647. Vic Prasad is associated with Craft Mortgages Canada Incorporated.
Let's go. All out of state, so they never seen that. I ain't fat, don't shut your fingers, then you lean back.